Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. Have you ever encountered somebody who maybe made some decisions or actions that just didn't sit well? Maybe you even question their integrity? Well, if so, we're going to chat about how you interact with those people and in those situations. But before we do, please be sure to share, subscribe, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. I want to give a shout out to nickmenard.com and the 1% Push, as well as his best-selling Amazon book, Mindset is My Degree. Thank you, Nick Menard, for sponsoring today's episode.
You're very welcome. Hello, winners. Happy Monday.
Monday. Wasn't that an old song? They used to go, Monday.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Recognize it with your voice.
I know, I augmented it too much. You couldn't recognize it.
That's what it is.
Yeah, it's not what it is. All right. Well, we chose today's topic in part because it's things that we come across from time to time. It is not necessarily the more fun aspects of leading and coaching and developing others, but it still is a critical thing. And, we have a saying that we use at the organization that both you and I work with. It's kind of a little bit of a mantra: inspect what you expect. And when you do that, sometimes you uncover some things that are eye-opening and really raise eyebrows. But before we get into our favorite segment, any high-level thoughts you wanted to share before we jump into it, my friend?
No, I mean, it's more triggered for corporate America, probably, these episodes. But it's if you start your own business and you start growing and start having one employee or one person you work with, this is something that is going to be very important for your brand and for the continued success of your organization and your business.
Yep, absolutely. All right. With that, let's jump into our favorite segment, quotes.
Quotes and quips.
There we go. We got to work on our coordination a little bit. We're getting too many vacations in here. All right, let's go with the first one from Warren Buffett. And this quote from Warren Buffett is, "In looking for people to hire, look for three qualities: integrity, intelligence, and energy. And if they don't have the first, the other two will kill you." Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, everything starts with integrity. Integrity is the center of everything you do, because if you don't do something in integrity, you may be successful for a short period of time until something happens, and then everything falls fast, like directly pretty much collapse. So you need to make sure to have a great foundation and have a great culture in your organization, in your team, in your business. And then people will know what they do matter, and what if they do the things in integrity. It may be in the eyes of some a little bit slower, but it's going to be a lot more. The foundation will be there. It's like when you start a relationship, if the foundation is not there, you can have everything else doing great. It's going to collapse eventually. And it's the same with integrity. So what Warren Buffett said there, I mean, I totally agree. I don't care how great the person is. If they don't have the integrity piece, it's going to be more damaging than opposite.
Yeah, 100%. Because we've both known people who made poor choices and the implications and impact that those choices made. Like, if you believe somebody's doing something and they're not, and they're actually falsifying it, I mean, you base a lot of decisions based on analysis and data and performance, and you could be getting false positives and actually having realistic negatives. So, yeah, totally agree. Yeah. All right, good old Warren Buffett. The next one is from Harvey Mackay. For those of you who don't know Harvey Mackay, he's a best-selling author, big into sales and marketing, I believe. And his quip is, "If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters." Thoughts on that one?
That's so true. It's so accurate while being funny. So we like a little bit levity. That's why we have those quips. But no, that's what we just said before. Like that's the center of everything. That's the foundation of your business. If that is not there, nothing else matter. and it's going to be a detriment to your organization, to your people, to your client, to your partners, to everyone. So integrity should be, and when you look at majority, if not all, like statements from companies and their value, core value, should I say, integrity is always part of it, and it should be the main part of your core value as a business and organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we're not going to jump up on a soapbox here and sermonize to everybody, but I think there also is, in my perspective anyway, organizations and individuals who lead heavy with integrity and all that, and they don't walk the talk. I mean, you can look back at, various corporate scandals, like Enron is one of the bigger ones. And you look at what happened with the mortgages back in '08, '09, and how they were securitizing a bunch of garbage on that one. And it actually, you know, collapsed the economy. And, I always, to me, it's funny because I've had a chat. I mean, I'd be curious about your take on this. I had a chat with somebody about this a few years ago, and we this is when we're actively doing interviews, for a variety of roles, and they would ask a lot of questions trying to, have the person showcase doing things of integrity, right? Or they were trying to ascertain their integrity, and their questions were asking were trying, roundabout way trying to go around it. And for me, I think it's kinda tricky to do that because, when people are in interviews, sometimes they're nervous and sometimes you have professional interviewers who know what to say. And to me, it was always, you have to trust the person on the integrity, but if there's a red flag that shows up in an interview, like there's not congruency in their answers on a similar question, like that was always a red flag. But I'm curious, like, when you're interacting with somebody or when you're trying to interview folks, what were some things that you kind of look for, or how did you try to ascertain whether or not this person seemed to be somebody who acted in integrity?
Yeah, so great question. So So yes, of course there are questions that you can ask. Like tell me about a time when you had an opportunity to take advantage of a situation, for example, for your own gain. How did you how did you, get there? And you see what kind of answer they give. Tell me about a time when you had to own up to an error, and you will see, everybody at those situations. So if they said, "Oh, it never happened to me," it's already a red flag. I would say also a time when you are thinking about, um like you mentioned, like you ask a question, and I always do that, tend to do that in interview. I ask a question in the beginning, very purposefully, and then towards the end I ask a very the same question with different wording, and to see if they come up with the same answer. Because in the beginning, they may be very focusing, and then towards the end of the interview, they may feel more confident if they feel like the interview went well. And that's where they will slip something, like I said, oh,
Mhm.
that's very different as the first answer. So, but again, you have professional interviewer, so interviewees. So it's very hard to tell in interview process. But I would say that, and I will pivot a little bit here, but one of the main reasons why in organization, in businesses, people tend to lose their integrity is when they feel like they cannot reach whatever target has been given to them. And
Mhm.
then they feel like, oh my God, I will get fired if I don't reach that whatever target is has been given to me. So let me make some little adjustments, like within my book of business, in order to showcase a better, a false positive, like you mentioned earlier. So I think it's important as a leader that you understand your targets as a region, as an organization.
Mhm.
Because if you feel like the target is something that it's completely out of sight, that's gonna be, you know motivating people to do the wrong thing. So I always try to get personally, I mean, we have all targets coming from above when you work at corporate, but I think it's important that the target was challenging. That's a challenge to get it. You need to work for it. But I think it's important that we know it's doable because of data or because of what we did in the past or something like that. If you feel like the target is completely out of control, which happened to me a few times in my career in different organizations when I feel like this is something that never been achieved and we are like 10% away from it in our best year. So what do you think will happen when we requested those numbers of sale, of service, of whatever you're doing, you know, by the end of the quarter, by the end of the year? Then you know that some people will feel stressed because they have a family to feed or whatever it is. It's not giving them reason to do something like that, but that may incentivize people to do something like that in order to feel safer or to show, that false positive. So as a leader, we need to be very cautious about those goals or those targets. And again, the big difference between targets and goals, target is something that needs to be achieved for the organization to achieve their own goals, and a goal is usually aspirational. So I like to give both to my teams in the company we work at, but also in my business, the travel agent business. I like to set goals for myself and with my associates about here's what we should be achieving, you know. And then here is the aspirational goal. And usually that's something that I ask openly. What is your
Mm.
goal this quarter and how and why are you going to achieve that? And then it's accountability. And if you don't have accountability, we already talked about it in the past, but accountability is so important in those things. But if you set the target too high and something that it's not going to be achievable, or you're going to lose focus from your team because they don't believe they can achieve it, or you're going to have integrity issues. So something to
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, one of the things I've focused on doing more and more as I advanced in my career is think of ways to limit the opportunity for legit excuses. And so when you're talking about like target setting, right? To your point, if you're setting a target that was never achieved before, or, is just really given the set of circumstances unrealistic, by most people's assessment who works for that organization, you're right. You're going to get some people who are going to be tempted to do bad things. So I think setting stretch targets, but have realistic aspects to it is important. I think the other thing, just as an accountability from a leadership perspective, component, if you have an environment where people feel psychologically safe, like if they make a mistake or if they are underperforming, do they feel like they can ask for help and get the support and guidance to improve? I think it's less likely people will be tempted to do integrity issues, but not always. But I think if there's an organization where mistakes are frowned upon or people are chastised for it, or if they're constantly berated or micromanaged, then I think you're actually augmenting the possibility or the frequency in which people may consider, you know, logging activities that didn't actually occur or saying something that isn't representative of the truth just to kind of, get somebody off their back or things like that. But I do think, you know, being conscious as a leader to ensure, are you creating psychologically safe environments where people feel they can grow and learn and not feel chastised, set realistic targets and be clear with the expectations, like defining things, right? Like if you're asking them to do X, do they know what is X and what is not X? Which helps. And then to your point, the accountability piece. And that's where, I mentioned a little bit earlier, inspect what you expect. Like when for us, we're in the client success industry. One of our measures for success is how many clients are we talking with on a regular basis because we have a proactive service model. Well, if I see the call activity numbers all of a sudden have a sharp spike on a particular team or individual, you got to trust but verify. You got to take a peek and make sure, are those really happening? And hopefully they are. And in many cases they are, but sometimes they're not. And that's when I shift into a zero tolerance policy. Like if somebody's falsifying stuff like that, and you've given them clear instructions, differentiation, all that stuff I mentioned earlier, you just can't. There's certain things it's just not worth a second chance. In my opinion,
No,
at work.
totally agree. I love your point about creating an environment when people feel safe about coming up to their leader and explaining like how they feel and the incertitude to achieve whatever is required. I think that's what I call culture. If you have the right culture with people, they will feel safe. If you have the wrong culture, they will not. So I think that's very important. I love the there is no excuse for falsifying anything. So when you do something like that at your job, well, you know that you're doing something you're not supposed to do. And that's also always what I said in the team, that if you have to ask me if it's good to do something, usually it's not, because you should know what's good. And if you're not sure, it means probably that you should not do it. But I much rather have them coming to me if there is any kind of hesitation. But I appreciate that, because it means that they trust me to be able to get to have their back, because they came to me first and asking about something. So
Yeah.
that's very, very important. Very, very important. In sales, I saw people in other organization who just bumped at the end of the quarter their um, proposals sent to clients, to showcase like a better pipeline, just to save another quarter. Usually sales is quarter to quarter. So again, you need to work 4 times harder the next quarter to achieve it, because at some point you will not get the results that you should be getting by having those kind of proposals. So it works in any kind of division that you are at, but there is a zero tolerance policy for that. When someone get caught for that, there, please do not give more chance and more chance, because they know what they're doing, and they're doing it purposefully. So that means that you know they will keep doing it. And that's unfortunate. Doesn't mean that they are bad people. That just means that they are not the people you want to have in your organization.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it gets tough sometimes because there have been people that, on a personal level, from our interactions, I really enjoyed. And then they make a bad decision. And, like we mentioned, they have a zero tolerance policy. We had to exit them from the business. And, in a couple of situations, I had people reach out to me after it happened. And they're like, "Do you think I could ever come back?" And I said, "No." And I said, "But treat this as a learning opportunity, right? Like this is a tough love situation, right? Because you're not going to get
Mhm.
a second chance, but you have in your power how you're going to respond to it and how you're going to conduct yourself going forward. Because, and I know you're a firm believer in this, uh, in life, there are no shortcuts to success. I mean, unless you get some random 1 in a billion shot where you hit the lottery, it's going to take some elbow grease. It's going to take perseverance. It's going to take making mistakes and learning from them. It's going to be take getting rejected over and over again, in order to make sales or get the yeses that you need, or to get the influence to somebody to see things your way. It takes time, and sometimes there's no shortcut. Now you can expedite it sometimes based on your talent level, based on your clock speed, or how quickly you're able to assimilate information, or your coachability. All those things can help shorten the learning curve, but there's always going to be a learning curve. And you have to, if you take it from the approach of appreciate the journey, you'll probably feel less tempted to make a bad decision that could cost your livelihood in that particular vocation or career.
Absolutely. Something that I recommend also if you work in a sales environment, definitely is to reach out to clients and said, do a survey kind of thing with clients. And unfortunately, if the client comes back and said, "Oh, I never heard of that person," that's something we all experience.
Oh,
Who is
yeah.
that person? I never got reached out from, so
Mhm.
so there are
Yeah.
a lot of ways. If you work in a service environment, you can reach out to partners or peers and said, "Hey, tell me how the work happen with XYZ person. So, how do they handle this with this client, and it's gonna help you also navigate. And there again, it's not a witch hunt. Yeah, I mean, I never really start a witch hunt unless I have things that makes me think, like you mentioned, a spike in number of calls, like made to a client, for example, or things of that nature. It doesn't mean most of the time, like you mentioned, it really happened, and it's just the calendaring. We work that way. But if you see consistently for the same team or the same kind of person, those spikes happen. Well, data, now we have everything, like every company have the data are easier and easier to get now with AI, and that's even easier. But also people aspect, how they see stuff, like based on partners and peers, that helps you confirm something that you already think based on the number you see. So don't hesitate to look at things, not a witch hunt, but look at things when you see something that smells fishy.
Yeah, and I love the fact you brought up AI because I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were commenting how in education, how many students are using AI
Mhm.
and they're really not learning. And again, we all had classes that we had to take that we didn't want to take because we weren't interested, and you just got through it and all that stuff. But I had a conversation with my younger son a couple years ago because he was in a class that he's like, I'm never going to use this stuff in my adult life and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, don't focus necessarily on the subject matter. Focus more on your process of learning. Like, how do you learn something you really have no interest in so that you can, be
Mm.
adequate at it? And I said, focus more on the process than the subject matter expertise. And he kind of, he's a teenager, so he kind of gives me that look. But, it was the whole point was, and we talked about this in a number of different episodes. You're always going to have to do things from time to time you don't want to do, but
Mhm.
you get it done. And sometimes if it's really something you don't want to do, you got to find ways to, I won't say like trick your mind, but just like reframe it in a way that makes it less painful or cumbersome to do it, so focus on the process piece or focus on an element of it that you actually do find enjoyable within that overall thing you may not enjoy.
No, definitely. And it's gonna be the magic question the next few years, I think, until whatever its next is. Because, you know, why would companies continue to pay for some people if they can do the work, like in 10 minutes through Gen AI or ChatGTP? So yeah, no, I agree with this. So basically, like, to summarize everything and to maybe the best practice, which seems normal, but let's just say it: do the right thing, escalate things when you feel overwhelmed or you feel like something is not working. If you are in a good, great environment, you will be heard and you will get the tools to get better. Um, and sometimes situations happen when the leader will be taking your side, even though you're not where you're supposed to be because you did every single step the right way. So again, I always tell people working, in my region, if you do everything that you're supposed to do the right way at the right cadence, you went above and beyond to try to reach things that you are not able to reach. You work very great with your partners, with your peers. You are an example to other people, and you support and help, elevate your team, and the numbers are not following through. I will not, blame you for anything. We're going to find a way to get even better with the process in order for you to reach it by doing what you already do. but you will not be faulted. And again, we're lucky in the organization we are that to be very, most of the time, very honest and human when it comes to end of year review and things like that. But if you are not in an organization like that, I think instead of doing something that you should not do to stay, look for another opportunity, because you're probably not in a company where you can flourish and grow and be your best self. So again, look, do the right thing, and the right thing will follow. If not, a lot of other company would love to have you.
You can expedite success, but there's no shortcuts to success. Just do the quality work. And as Nick mentioned, if you're encountering roadblocks, raise it. And if you're not getting support, go to an organization that will support you, or start your own.
Hey, I love that.
Yeah, there you go. Be what you want to embody. Lead it from the front, from yourself. So,
and create the culture you want to be a part of.
That's right. There you go. Yeah, you don't find it out in the marketplace, and you be the marketplace and create it. So,
wow. Drop the mic.
There we go. We'll drop the mic on that one, winners. So thank you for tuning in to this Monday Mindset. Please be sure to share, subscribe, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. And thanks again to nickmenard.com and the 1% Push and his best-selling Amazon book, Mindset is My Degree, for sponsoring today's episode. We hope this episode found you well, and looking forward to talking with you again next week. Take care, winners.
Bye, winners.